They told me the debrief would take 20 minutes. It took 4 hours, and, halfway through, the senior officer asking the questions put his pen down, folded his hands, and said nothing for a long time. Not because he was thinking. Because he didn't know how to write what he'd just been told on a standard incident form. There's a box on that form that says nature of altercation. There's no box that says we were wrong about everything. I was there. I saw the whole thing unfold across 3 days that I will not be able to explain to anyone who wasn't present, and I've stopped trying. What I can do is put it in order. What happened in the gym? What happened in the water? What happened after, the part nobody talks about, the part that lived in her eyes for a half second before she put her face away and became something professional again. Her name was Lieutenant Reyes. 26 years old. 131 pounds. And she was the most dangerous person in that building before anyone in it knew her name. This is how it started. This is how it ended. And this, the middle part, the ugly, honest, human middle, is the part that will not leave me alone. The base gym smelled the way all base gyms smell: rubber mats, iron, the particular sweat of men who've decided the body is a project rather than a home. I was there for a routine observation assignment, clipboard and invisible the way administrative staff always are, watching the 0600 morning conditioning block fill up like a tide coming in. She walked in at 0558. I noticed her the way you notice a wrong note in a song you know by heart, not loudly, just wrong. She was small. Compact in the shoulders, economical in the way she moved, setting her bag down in the corner nearest the door the way someone does when they've already located all the exits. She wore no unit patch on her PT gear. New issue. Still creased. I wrote that down. New. No patch. Corner placement. Situational scan on entry. I didn't know why I wrote it. Force of habit, maybe. Staff Sergeant Briggs noticed her about 4 minutes later. Briggs was the kind of large that takes years of concentrated effort, the kind of man who'd turned his body into a credential. He ran the morning conditioning block with the easy authority of someone who'd never been made to question whether that authority was earned or simply assumed. The men around him moved in his orbit and called it voluntary. He walked past her twice before he stopped. "You lost, new girl?" She was mid-stretch, one arm pulled across her chest. She finished the stretch before she answered. "No. This is the advanced block." "I know." He looked at her the way a man looks at a math problem he's certain he's already solved. "This ain't beginner fitness. You want the general PT session, it's at 0700 in Building C. I'm in the right place." The men near Briggs had gone quiet in the particular way men go quiet when they're deciding whether something is going to be entertainment or awkwardness. A few shifted their weight. One, a corporal named Devlin, I'd learn later, looked down at his shoes. Briggs smiled. Not a good smile. "Beat it, new girl." She looked at him for a moment. The kind of look that has a lot going on underneath it and shows you exactly none of it. "No," she said again, and turned back to her warm-up. That was when he grabbed her ponytail. Not a shove. Not a shoulder check. A grab, fingers closing around the base of her hair and yanking backward, the kind of move designed to humiliate, to reduce, to make a person feel the precise dimensions of their own smallness. I came out of my chair. I don't remember deciding to. I was just suddenly standing, clipboard at my side, mouth open, watching. What happened next took approximately 1.4 seconds. I timed it afterward because I didn't believe my own memory. She didn't yell. She didn't freeze. There was no visible decision. It was more like watching water suddenly change direction, all at once, as though the new direction had always been the only option. Her weight dropped and pivoted, her right hand came up inside his grip and did something precise to his wrist that I cannot fully describe except to say that his fingers opened immediately and involuntarily. She stepped into the space that created, used her hip as a fulcrum, and put 240 pounds of Staff Sergeant on the mat in a movement so efficient it barely made a sound. He hit the rubber. She stepped back. The gym went so quiet I could hear the ventilation system. Briggs lay there for a moment with the specific stillness of a man whose body has just sent his brain a message it doesn't know how to decode. His face went through several things: pain, confusion, rage, and, then, settled into something I recognized as dangerous. She was already back in her stretch. He got up. "You're done," he said. His voice had gone flat. Men who use that voice have usually decided the conversation is over and, what comes next isn't conversation. "You're gone. You're out of this unit, this block, this staff sergeant." The voice came from the doorway. Major Callahan was a narrow man with gray at his temples and the kind of permanent eye squint that comes from 30 years of looking at things other people miss. He was not a man who raised his voice. He'd never needed to. He looked at Briggs. Then, at her. Then, at me. I don't know why. I was nobody, I was clipboard, and, then, back at Briggs. "Do you know who this is?" Callahan said. Briggs opened his mouth. "Lieutenant Elena Reyes," Callahan said. "SEAL Team 8. Bud/S Class 420. The first woman to complete the full program without a medical washout, a rollback, or a peer review exemption." He paused. "She finished Hell Week 12 days after fracturing her left radius. In case you're wondering about the radius, that's the weight-bearing bone in the forearm." Nobody moved. "She's here on a 2-week inter-unit conditioning exchange," Callahan continued, "which I arranged personally, which I mentioned in a briefing that you were present for, Staff Sergeant." Another pause, the kind with intention behind it. "Would you like to continue this conversation, or would you like to go ice whatever she did to your wrist?" Briggs left. The room let out a breath it had been holding for 2 minutes. She hadn't moved. Still stretching. Still, and, this is the part one kept turning over, still completely contained, like nothing had happened, like the air around her hadn't just reorganized itself. But, when Callahan walked past her on his way out, something small crossed her face. A quarter-second thing. Gone before I could name it. I named it anyway. Tired. Not tired like sleep-deprived. Tired like a person who has performed a version of this exact scene: walk in, be doubted, be challenged, be forced to prove so many times that the performance has become its own kind of labor. The risk take was nothing to her. The part that cost her something was the part that always comes first. The part where she has to stand there and be the thing they've already decided she isn't. I wrote that down too, though it wasn't the kind of thing that belonged on an observation form. She caught me writing. Our eyes met for a moment, just a moment, and she did the thing I'd see her do many times over the following 2 weeks when she was deciding whether to engage. She looked at me directly, measuring something. Then, she looked at my clipboard. Then, back at me. "You gonna write down the wrist thing?" she said. "Already did." "Good." She turned back to the room, rolled her shoulders once, and raised her voice without raising it. "All right. Who else needs to get that out of their system before we start?" Nobody moved. She nodded, once, like she'd expected that. "Then, let's go." They went. I sat back down and looked at what I'd written and realized I'd been gripping the pen hard enough to leave a mark in my palm. I was not supposed to be at the pool. My clearance level puts me in rooms, not in the field. I document. I observe. I file reports with bureaucratic language designed to sand the human edges off of things until they become manageable. But Major Callahan had pulled me aside that morning with the specific expression of a man who has something he wants witnessed and no one appropriate to witness it. "You've been watching her," he said. "It's my job to watch." "No. Not like that. You've been actually watching." He handed me a pool deck visitor badge. "Be there at 1400. The pool complex at a SEAL training facility is not a pool the way a hotel pool is a pool. It is a long, cold, institutional body of water that exists purely as an instrument of braking. The underwater fluorescents give everything a quality of light that belongs in dreams, blue-white, a little wrong, the kind of light that makes time hard to judge. There were 12 of them in the water when I arrived. The exercise was called drown-proofing. Hands and feet bound. 4 hours in open water. The objective was survival without the use of limbs, rhythmic sinking and surfacing using only core buoyancy and breath management. It is one of the more quietly cruel things humans have designed, because it removes every instinct and every tool and leaves only will. I found a seat in the upper observation deck. Below me, 12 figures moved through the water in various states of struggle and control. I found her immediately. Not because she was performing well, though she was, but because of what she was doing between cycles. When her face came above the surface, she was counting. Not out loud. I could see it in the micro-movement of her lips. A cadence. Something private and internal that she'd built or borrowed, and that was now the thing between her and the water. The count was steadying her breathing, and the breathing was steadying everything else. It was the most disciplined thing I had ever watched a human being do, and it looked from a distance like almost nothing, just lips moving, just a woman in the water, just another training block. 2 stations down, a man called Harker was in trouble. I knew his name because he'd been in my observation group from day one, big, capable, perpetually certain he was the strongest thing in any given room. He was not a bad man. He was a man who'd been taught that confidence was the same thing as competence, and, in calm water, the two are indistinguishable. In drown-proofing, they are not indistinguishable. Not at all. His breathing had gone ragged. I could see it in the chop around him, too much motion, burning energy, fighting the water instead of living inside it. His head went under and came back up at the wrong angle. Under again. The 2 instructors on deck were watching him the way they watch everyone, evaluating, timing, waiting for the line between struggle and emergency with the flat precision of people who know exactly where it is. She'd seen it before they moved. From 2 stations away, with her hands and feet bound, she began to talk to him. Not yell. Not coach. Talk. Low and even and, with no performance in it, the way you talk to someone who's scared, carefully, through the fear, like you're sliding a hand under a door. Harker. Hey. Harker, look at me. He was beyond looking at anyone. You're fighting it. Stop fighting it. You cannot win a fight with water, it has no ego, it doesn't care, stop fighting. Her own face dipped under as she spoke and came back up without interrupting herself. Count with me. I know you can hear me. Count with me. He went under. She said the number anyway. 3. 4. 5. He came up. His eyes found her face and she held them, kept counting, and something happened in him that I don't have clinical language for, something realigned. His breathing changed. The chop around him flattened. He started to sink and surface with intention instead of panic, roughly, imperfectly, but with intention. The instructors said nothing. They watched. I wrote nothing. My pen was still. Some things resist documentation while they're happening. They pulled everyone out at the 4-hour mark. Harker came out of the water and sat on the tile and put his elbows on his knees and didn't look at anyone for a long time. She came out 3 stations down and was handed a towel and sat and did what she did when she was processing something, went still. Not checked out. Contained. Harker looked up. Across the pool deck, between 12 dripping, exhausted people, he looked at her. She was already looking somewhere else. Reyes. She turned. He didn't say thank you. Neither of them was the type for what that would require, the acknowledgement, the debt, the thing that changes the air between people. But he looked at her with something open in his face, something that wasn't there before, the kind of look you give someone when you've realized they've seen you at your worst and it didn't make them cruel. She gave him a half nod. Small. Enough. He looked away. She looked away. I looked down at my blank page. That night I sat in my quarters and tried to write the observation report and kept stopping. Not because I didn't have the language. Because the language I had was wrong for what I'd seen. Subject demonstrated leadership under duress, true, technically. Subject displayed composure and inter-unit support behaviors, also technically true. Every sentence I wrote was accurate and none of them had anything to do with what actually happened, which was this: a woman with her hands and feet bound, fighting her own survival, chose in the middle of that fight to see someone else's. The radius fracture had healed into a slight irregularity I'd noticed that morning, a small outward jag in the bone just above the wrist, the kind that forms when something heals without rest. I thought about that while I wrote the report. I thought about Hell Week, 12 days in, carrying that weight. I thought about her lips counting. I wrote, subject displays exceptional focus and resilience under extended physical stress. I closed the folder. I opened it again. At the bottom of the form, below the official fields, there is a line marked Additional Observations Optional. I wrote, she was counting for herself first. And then, she counted loud enough for him to hear. Then, I crossed it out because it wasn't the kind of thing that belonged in a report. But, I've thought about it every day since. On the last night of her exchange, someone put a note under her door. I know because I was in the hallway when she opened it. I was leaving the administrative annex, end of a long day, 3 folders under my arm and a coffee that had been cold for 2 hours. She was coming from the opposite direction in civvies, dark jeans, a gray thermal, hair down for the first time I'd seen it. Without the PT gear and the rank, she looked approximately 19 years old. She bent, picked up the folded paper, read it. Her face did nothing. She folded it back along its crease, put it in her pocket, and looked up and saw me standing there in the hallway trying to decide whether I was witnessing something I should document. "You want to know what it says," she said. "That's not my you're only here because of politics. You'll get someone killed and then you'll go home." She said it the way someone reads a bus schedule. It's the 3rd one this week. Different handwriting each time, which is either 3 separate people or someone who's been practicing. I didn't know what to say. She didn't seem to require me to say anything. "Can I ask you something?" I said. She waited. "Does it?" I stopped. "Start it again." "How do you do that?" "The face thing. Where nothing shows." She looked at me for a moment. "Practice. That's it?" "That's most of it." She leaned against the wall, arms crossed, and looked at the ceiling in the way people look at the ceiling when they're deciding how much to give. When I was going through BUD/S, there was an instructor, not a bad one, actually, one of the better ones, who told me that the men around me were going to be watching my face every time something went wrong. Looking for proof. And, if I flinched, they'd use it. Not because they were malicious. Because they needed to know the person next to them wasn't a variable. "So you stopped flinching?" I stopped showing the flinch. She looked back down from the ceiling. "It's still there. I just decided it was mine." I thought about the pool deck. The half nod to Harker. "Is that why you counted out loud?" I said. "So he could use it too." She looked at me differently then. Not warmly, she wasn't built for warm in the easy way. But, with something that adjusted. "You noticed that." "I notice things. It's about the only thing I do well." She was quiet for a moment. "Then, he would have made it." "Harker. He's strong enough." "But, he was spending himself fighting instead of floating, and there's a version of that where you run out before the time does." She shifted her weight. "I've been in that version. It's a bad 4 hours." "Hell Week?" A pause. "Day 6. She didn't elaborate. She wasn't going to elaborate. Day 6 of Hell Week is the last day. The part everyone knows breaks the most people, not because it's the hardest physically, but because by then, the body has been running on debt for so long that the only thing left holding it together is the decision to hold together, and that decision is made in a part of the mind that the body keeps trying to override. I thought about that. I thought about her radius fracture, the one that healed irregular. I thought about what day 6 means next to fractured radius, and I felt something rearrange in my chest. She didn't know what I was thinking and wouldn't have asked. "Why did you come here?" I said. "The exchange." "You had to know it was going to be like this?" I was going to say difficult. She almost smiled. I came because Callahan asked. And, because I have a meeting with the Joint Integration Committee in about 6 weeks and someone in that meeting is going to use words like pilot program and exceptional circumstances and proof of concept. And, whatever I am when I walk into that room is going to be the argument. She looked at me steadily. Not what I did at BUD/S. Not the record. Me. In the room. Whether they look at me and see a problem they're trying to manage or a tool they're trying to acquire. A beat. I came here to find out which one I am to these people. And she pulled the note out of her pocket. Set it on the hallway table between us, flat. Mixed results. We stood there for a moment. There's a man named Devlin, she said. Corporal. Was in the gym that first morning. I knew who she meant, the one who'd looked at his shoes. He came to me after the pool session. Brought me coffee. Didn't say anything about the gym or the pool or any of it. Just put the coffee down and said good work today, Lieutenant, and left. She looked at the note on the table. I don't know what any of that means about the committee, she said. But I know what it means about Devlin. She picked up the note. Folded it once more. Put it back in her pocket with the others. With the others. She was keeping them. I registered that and didn't ask. I'll be gone before 0600, she said. I don't do goodbyes. She walked down the hall toward her quarters. I stood there with my cold coffee and my 3 folders and the empty hallway. I filed my final observation report the next morning. 4 pages of clean professional language that described a 2-week inter-unit exchange with no significant disciplinary incidents. The wrist takedown had been quietly processed and filed as a training altercation, resolved, and several commendations for performance and unit integration. At the bottom, in the additional observations field, I wrote 1 sentence. Then, I sat with it for a while. Then, I didn't cross it out. Lieutenant Reyes is not a pilot program. She is not a proof of concept. She is what the program is trying to become, and the committee should be informed that the most important thing she did here was not in the gym or the pool, it was the thing she did at 2200 on her final night, when she stood in a hallway and told an administrative officer what it costs to be excellent in a room that keeps asking you to prove you belong in it, and then walked away and let the telling be enough. Major Callahan read it. He didn't change it. 6 weeks later I heard the committee meeting ran 3.5 hours over schedule. I heard her name said 3 times in an adjacent hallway through a closed door. I don't know what happened in that room. I keep meaning to find out. I keep not finding out, and I'm not entirely sure I'm ready for the answer to be anything other than what I believe it already is. She was counting for herself first.